Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. Here in the throes of summer, no doubt, only a few days into summer, already had the Watermelon Festival, all of the 4th of July festivities, looking square in the face at the Wausau Possum Festival, arguably the hottest day of the year. We've had guests already on the show representing that festival. Hopefully you'll join us. First Saturday, as it always is, in August, coming up, the Wausau Possum Festival. Our guests today are Jacquie and Bill Witt, resident managers of the Armstrong House here in Chipley, Florida. When we come back, we're going to talk to Jacquie and Bill about just exactly what is the Armstrong House. If you're a regular viewer of the show, you've certainly seen Forrest Smith, you've seen Barry and Marianne Rockburn, even Alcus Brock back before he passed away, talking about what the West Florida Baptist Association does. This is one of those organizations under that umbrella doing great things. If you're looking for a little bit of inspiration and direction, this is probably a show you're not going to want to miss. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guests today are Jacquie and Bill Witt. Just came on as resident managers of Armstrong House. I think it was a couple of weeks ago maybe that Barry Rockburn called me and said, hey, we've got some new folks on board. Really like for them to come over, make a trip to the studio and introduce themselves to the community. So thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you for having us. We're very glad to be here.
We had the opportunity in the pre-show to sort of discuss a little bit about you guys. Jacquie, give us a little thumbnail sketch of who are Jacquie and Bill Witt.
Well, Jacquie and Bill Witt are not quite 2 years in newlyweds. We both have various experiences in our past. I was raised in the Chipley area, moved away when I turned 18 and came right back. Bill was raised in the California area, lived
everywhere.
And we both have been in this area since 2004, 2005. We've just tried to come in and be a part of the community, reach out, help wherever is needed, do whatever is asked of us. Mostly follow God's leading. Where does He want us? What does He want us doing? And it led us to Armstrong House.
So when you got back here, it was Old Home Week. You knew lots of folks?
No, everyone had changed. The people that I knew in high school had gotten married, so their names had changed. It was hard to find them, and social media I was not real good with at the time. So I had a little bit of a time finding people and reconnecting again, but have done so with several people, and it's been nice to be back home.
Several years ago, we had a reunion of all of the Chipley High School homecoming queens. And it was organized by the daughter of the very first homecoming queen. And they came on the show and invited us to sort of be embedded in their week of activities. And so we went to their breakfast, which was held at the Women's Club here in Chipley. They had a huge response of the, I want to say, 45, 46 queens.
Wow.
I want to say they had 30 or so come back.
That's pretty good.
So I kind of flashed on that when you talked about that coming back, because in that case, many had, since the day they literally graduated high school, probably never saw anybody.
Right.
Some that stayed, again, different last name. And even as small as Chipley is, you can move in different social or educational or church circles and never see the same people that may live just blocks from you.
Well, and even you mentioned social circles, even at church. We attend First Baptist Church. Well, there were 3 services. So some of the people went to the first service and the second service and the third service, so you kind of missed everybody.
Well, I'll tell you, we go to Shiloh, and Shiloh's about the same size, I guess. Not as many people, but certainly a large church. And depending on where you sit, even though there's one service, you can go weeks and weeks and weeks without, I didn't know you were there that week.
Right.
I'm trying to explain to somebody the sermon that happened 3 weeks ago. I was there. And it's like, I think that you almost have to make a concerted effort to, especially in church, to move around a little bit. We get comfortable. We always sit in front of Joe and behind Mary and next to the kids over here. And many times we miss a lot.
Right.
And so hopefully that's a part of the show, is to reconnect people. Bill, where in California were you originally from?
I was originally born in the Sacramento area, born and raised there. Turned 18, went in the Marines, and then after that I like 12 different states I've lived in. Just got involved in IT for a while. Just chase wherever the work is. I mean, I did it at a contract basis instead of a long-term employee with somebody. So wherever the bubble of business was, you go there for a while and you get contracts, and then it dries up. So okay, we'll go somewhere else, wherever the bubble is.
Well, thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
We appreciate that.
It was good.
And Northern California, not so much these days, but certainly a little different complexion than Southern California. Yeah. I spent 4 years in San Diego myself.
It was a lot different back then.
Yeah. Welcome back to town, for what it's worth. You've been here quite a while now, actually, 10, 12 years.
Right.
You moved here just about the time that the bubble burst, so you got to experience all of that. Actually, when you moved here, things were probably chugging along really, really well. It wasn't until 2006, 7, that things started really going bad. I know that my family lost half our income. My wife was a realtor, and it was built on a false economy, obviously. So but many people got into a lot of trouble during those days. We're fortunate. Chipley is a small enough, rural enough area in a very large rural county that we're probably the least affected when highs and lows swing. So we're probably, when things get rough, we're probably one of the last affected. When things get better, it may take us a while to be, for it to catch up. People forget about how many people who live here in Chipley in Washington County work in that service industry. So when they do all of the oil spill reparations and give that money to the coastal areas, sometimes I think they forget about those people from Chipley and Vernon and Ebro and Wausau and Sunny Hills who make that trip every single day to work in the hotels and the restaurants. Many who went out of business due to that perfect storm of the oil spill, the storms, and then that bubble bursting all at the same time. As mentioned, we have had Forrest Smith on the show talking about West Florida Baptist Association and all of those associated ministries. You guys are the resident managers of Armstrong House. Jacquie, talk a little bit about exactly what is Armstrong House.
Armstrong House is, in its most simple definition, temporary emergency shelter for 1 to 3 nights. Whatever the reason, your house burned down, you need a place to stay. You're homeless, you need a place to stay. You are a domestic abuse victim and you need a place to stay. Whatever the reason, we just want to show them the love of God, that God has a place for you and He has a plan for you. We might not know what it is, but we can shelter you while you're finding out. We can point you to resources to help you set back up your own home, to help you be more educated if you need to be more educated too. Whatever it is that you need, we're looking to the community for what resources do you have here or there that you can help us help these people to get more stable.
A hand up rather than a hand out.
Exactly. That's what we're about. And in the whole process, letting them know God loves you. Jesus died for you.
And that's the larger ministry, obviously. Realizing you're only in your second month in that position, do you have figures, Bill, about the number of people impacted by Armstrong House on an annual basis? I mean, any rough ideas? And you don't even have to talk exact numbers.
On an annual? Well, just the month of June, we had about 30, 35, not just people, but families. Could be a family unit of 1 or 5 or 6.
Wow.
So that's just the month of June that came through.
Wow.
When it started, it was about 100 a year. That was back in 05, and it keeps growing. Last year, it was like, 400, something like that?
I think around 460.
Around 4, between 4 and 450.
Well, what you're saying for June is roughly 1 a day.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Well, they're staying, they have the 3-night stay. So you've got this family in this room, and this family in this room, and this family in this room, and you have, I think we had 56 nights in June that we provided shelter for someone.
56 nights for 30 families.
Well, they weren't all there at the same time. I mean, they were there throughout the...
It's hard.
There were 30 clients.
When I use the word families, some of these were just single individuals.
Well, let me rephrase the question. I think I'm asking the question and you're answering it, but I think that you impacted 30 individual people or groups of people in the course of June.
Right. That's just June.
You had 30 inquiries for help.
We provided 30. Well, we had more inquiries, and then some people just don't even call back. You give them information and they don't call back, and it's like, Okay, and then I try to reach back out to them, and they don't answer the phone. So it's like, okay, you didn't want our help.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there exist those who work the system. With the food pantry, we see that a lot.
Right.
You can't judge anybody on anybody else.
Right.
And you can't make any kind of sweeping generalizations based on, I'd rather give somebody something who's a scammer than to take the opportunity of misjudging.
Exactly.
And how can we judge?
Right.
Years ago, I was in EMS, and I remember early on in my career, just knowing somebody was under the influence and then finding out later that it was just acidosis.
Right.
They were having an episode. So, unfortunately, I had my lesson and was very embarrassed by it.
Right.
How often, though, have we done just that? So, the opportunity for fraud, for getting away with something, what's really cool, though, is I would imagine, in a way, you almost welcome those because you are still able to minister to those people.
I still am. I'm thinking about this one particular family that I had. It was a mom and some children, very young children, and just unruly to the point of drawing on the walls with crayons. And I can remember being able to minister to her and her just throwing up her hand saying, I just don't know what I'm going to do. It's like, well, let's pray about it. We're going to trust God because He has a plan in this, but let's see if we can get you hooked up with someone that can mentor you and can teach you these things. So that, and then as I'm scrubbing the crayons off the wall, praying for these children, that they will have the guidance and the boundaries that they need. So that was a blessing to me to be able to do that.
Bill, when somebody comes to you, typically they're going to have more than just the need for a bed for the night. They've got probably socioeconomic issues in their life that have caused them to be in this thing. Even a domestic abuse, which may be a very relatively temporary thing, at least until the guy gets put in jail, or unfortunately she goes back to him. Sometimes he goes back to her. There's more cases than people realize of abuse going the other direction. But when they do come to you with those issues, what kind of local organizations? I know, notwithstanding churches, because obviously that's a given. What are the organizations in town about which people may not be familiar do you deal with to try to help these people?
Yeah, that's a hard, long-winded question. No, the answer, I mean, it's if you're seeking housing, there's the Tri-County services, not just the transportation part I'm talking about, but they actually provide services where they'll help people with deposits and that kind of activity. And then there's the housing piece that they have, where you can get the HUD, and then we have a whole list of landlords if they're seeking housing, and if they're seeking food and they need food substances, like you said, the food pantry, which is just right downstairs in our building,
right?
And they can use that. There's also the Salvation Army domestic abuse services that they can get a lot of counseling, and they call themselves domestic violence, but they just a lot of counseling for the families and stuff. They will provide that, whether it's outpatient. They have some facilities for inpatient. If you're coming in as like some of the women that came in from domestic violence situations, like they're really scared. I mean, it's fresh. It just happened. And some of them go to Bethel House down in Panama City, which is, I don't even know where it is. I mean, we're familiar with it. Yeah, you call them and they say, okay, we'll meet you at the police station and escort you there because they don't want to tell anybody where they're at. Sure. So there's that kind of, there's a lot of that stuff. And a lot, if you need help with clothing or other types of things, then Love in Action, which is part of the West Florida Baptist Association. So we're affiliated with them. So a lot of that type of stuff goes on. A lot of it is just, even though we're not licensed counselors, we provide a lot of counseling and conversations with people.
You don't have to be licensed to pray either.
Right. Yeah, we do a lot of prayer, but we'll also just talk to them, okay, why are you making this decision, and why are you not thinking of other resources that places you could go talk to and walk them through doing that?
My wife is on the board of directors of Habitat for Humanity, and matter of fact, they just refurbished a building downtown Chickley just relatively recently. Yeah. And they have a lot of people come in there referred by the churches, sometimes by the Southern Baptist Association. What Do you still use those? Do you send people there as well?
Is that on our list? I don't believe that's on our list, is it?
Maybe not have that cooperative relationship.
We
right
haven't
now.
yet, but that is another resource that we should be taking advantage of. And,
Yeah, it seems like even Goodwill and
jumping in there
Salvation Army is
with
now
that.
closed in Chipley.
Our greatest mentor at this point and resources has been Barry Rockburn at Love in Action, because he has so many community contacts, and we're just coming in this very fresh. So we are looking to his wisdom and seeking to make some of those same communication contacts that he has, but also to reach out to new contacts for our mission.
Well, you mentioned the Goodwill Center. They just recently reopened that training facility they have in the back there.
Sure.
And that we do
That's
have a
real
contact
recent,
with,
so-
with the job training at Goodwill.
And that,
The one time we worked with the marketing of Goodwill out of Tallahassee, and many people don't realize what Goodwill does. They think it's the place to go if you're looking for a used chair or a piece of furniture to put in the kids' room that you don't mind getting beat up.
Right.
But you're right, the opportunities afforded by Goodwill are huge, and that's another show. Barry and Marianne Rockburn, I think for years now, have been trying to back out of the. They say if you're looking for somebody to help you do something, you find a busy person.
Right.
And I think that's no more true than for Barry and
Then for
Marianne.
Barry, yes.
They do what it takes. They do what's necessary. I mean, even Forrest himself, I think he's up to, 5 kids now or something like that with his adopted children. And so you've got a huge support structure, as you point out.
Exactly.
That's got to help instead of somebody throwing you a book and say, here's the rules, here's what's happened over the last year,
Right.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Do you find that you do have that support system to the point where you know literally that no matter what happens, there's somebody you can talk to?
I really do have that confidence that no matter what situation arises, I can pick up the phone and say, Marianne, help, or Barry, help, and their help is right there. They are so genuine and so eager to serve and to help. And
I would
be great
imagine that
mentors.
it requires a really close relationship with law enforcement.
oh, yeah.
Right.
Obviously, brand new sheriff. We've got Kevin Cruz as Washington County Sheriff, and now Scott Thompson as police chief. Do you enjoy that working relationship with law enforcement, and do you get some of referrals from that law enforcement?
We get some referrals from them, yes. And every person that comes in to stay as a client has to be screened through the sheriff's department, because we have, like we mentioned, we have families that are there, people, children, and so sometimes there's women in there with their kids coming out of domestic violence situations. So the last thing we want in there is somebody that's a perpetrator of crimes on women and children. So they have to be cleared. So we have to be. We play nice. We want to. I mean, the sheriffs do a wonderful service for the county, so we get along. We went in and visited Sheriff Cruz, and we went in and visited
Scott?
I forget his name, Scott Thompson. Yes.
And I would imagine if somebody's got an outstanding warrant or a warrant,
they're not.
you don't want to be sheltering them,
Right.
unbeknownst to you or to other people that are,
right.
or at least to all the community. None of us who live in Chipley are very far from the Armstrong House, and Chipley's not
Right.
that big a place. There's
Yeah.
3,500 people here.
And that is one thing that is definitely checked, is for outstanding warrants and warrants.
That's part of it's part of the background they do. I mean, like you said, we don't want to be sheltering people that are wanted.
Just due diligence.
Right.
And I would think that goes a long way toward maybe determining the sincerity of the person coming to you for help. Because if
Right.
they say, "Oh no, that's never mind. Then I'll just keep on walking."
Right.
We've had some of that.
Oh, I
We
don't
have
doubt
had
it.
that.
I
Just
don't
in
doubt
the
it.
last month and a half now, it's been since June 1st.
In
We've
the
had a
old
few.
days, during the Depression particularly, my great-grandmother talked about, my grandmother actually talked about little signs that hobos would make. They'd put a stone on top of a post in a certain way so they knew that house was an easy touch. You could
Right.
always go there and get a sandwich. Do you find that there's sort of a grapevine amongst that community? And I hate to even use that term because obviously you deal with a plethora of problems and issues, but do you find that you get a lot of self-referrals? And when I say self, I mean from the community of those who may have been abused before or maybe availed themselves of your service?
Yeah.
Right. We've had several self-referrals, especially in the last 2 weeks. We had someone from another city come in, and then I noticed within that next week, we had 3 more come from that city. So it's like, hey, guess what? Armstrong House is the place to be. Come on over here. So
that's giving you high marks.
it's great. You know, they were apparently well serviced at our facility. So it's wonderful to be able to help more people, to be able to reach out, not just to Washington County, but to other counties.
With these temperatures, and we have an inordinately hot summer this year. It's always hot here. When I first moved to Florida 45 years ago, somebody told me we had 3 seasons: too hot, too cold, and too nice to work. And it seemed like the too nice to work season didn't last long enough, you know. And that's why they had such a hard time keeping employees on the beach, because they were always out hunting or fishing or surfing or chasing women.
Right.
When we have these inordinately high temperatures, do you find that you have some people coming just to avail themselves of some air conditioning and to get away from it? Have you gleaned any of that kind of stuff?
I would say yes, because when you come in as a client, you know right up front that we have the right, I guess, to come in and inspect and kind of we do that. We do weekly maintenance checks and all this kind of stuff. But most of the time we go in there and, you know, that thermostat, it's cranked down pretty good.
Right.
So there's that aspect of it. But I mean, it's an emergency temporary shelter, 1 to 3 nights. That's the moniker we hold. I mean, there's times that people say, look, I have this going on and a couple more days, you know, so people stay longer than 3 days, but you come in and it's 1 to 3 days. And you better be going about your business of trying to make something going for the future, you know, to line things up, or, you know, your 3 days comes and I'm sorry, we need this, you got to move on.
You're vetting them coming in, and you're also actively involved in whatever progress.
Right.
So if it is an abuse situation, you're following up, making sure they are making the reports, doing whatever.
Right, making the
they need to
reports,
do.
making the contacts to be safe, making the contacts for what is your next step.
Where do you go from here?
Right, where do you go from here? Because we're temporary. We're not permanent. You can't move in and stay here. I know you like it, but you can't stay for the rest of your life. You have to make room for the next person who needs it just as much as you did.
What's your biggest challenge going in, recognizing you've only been there a little over 30 days, but this is in your heart. So I get a feeling that you guys have lived this your whole life. The spirit of giving, the spirit of helping.
Right.
What's your biggest challenge at Armstrong House right now?
I think the biggest thing is understanding where the clients are coming from and what is narrowing their need. Because we can't help everybody with everything. And most of the time when they come, they just need everything. And so we line up what we can. We pray about everything, because that's what's going to change things, is the prayer. And getting them to realize that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, instead of, I got to fix this, because none of us can fix anything. And so helping them to understand where their true resource lies in Jesus Christ, I think is my greatest challenge.
And maybe, go ahead.
My greatest challenge is the dynamics of the rules are such that this is a short-term facility. But the heart reaches out and is like, well, we want to do everything we can, however long it takes. Well, you can't do that when we got 6 or 7 rooms. That means there's only 6 or 7 groups of people, and then everybody else has to, wait outside in tents? If I follow the heart completely that way. So I have to, draw the line and say, okay, these are the rules, and this is what we're doing. And, I'm sorry it's putting you in a bind, but there's others trying to stage in here, That's the biggest challenge I find.
And I would think that that's almost anybody who wants to give challenge, because if you want to be beneficent, if you want to be benevolent, if you want to give and donate, at what point do you start hurting yourself, or do you take away from other things which need attention? Interestingly, they say that as good of works as Mother Teresa did, Donald Trump has helped more people than Mother Teresa. And the only reason I bring that up is because he's castigated. And I don't agree with everything or that's going on, and we're not going to get into the politics of it. But at the end of the day, everybody gives according to their ability.
Right.
And those are 2 hugely disparate examples. But in effect, Donald Trump has put his finger and touched more people than Mother Teresa ever could have. It's just that for her date and time, and the fact that she gave her whole self totally,
right.
She stands out. Going forward, what do you see? Do you see that becoming more of a community, or do you think it's more effective focused on 6 or 7 rooms, or, looking at that 5, 10, 20 years, presuming that you stayed with this one project, would you see this becoming more of a village or community, or what are your thoughts about that?
Wow. I would love to see it grow and have more rooms for more people. The current facility does not allow for that, so that's would be a long-term goal. The main thing right now is just to make sure that we can do the very best we can, get even more resources, even more contacts within the community to help the people better, if that makes more sense.
Sure.
Just be more thorough in what we're doing. I always feel like we haven't done enough.
And that's being a giving spirit. Bill, same question.
It's we haven't discussed poverty at all, which is what we are. We're on one end of this, or somewhere within the spectrum, dealing with the effects of the poverty that occurs in Washington County, and the food closet being there, and all our clients come in and they need to hit it. So okay, there's a lack of food at different economic levels too, and so all the people we're dealing with are on the low end of the poverty scale, and finding housing is their they have a lot of priorities. They want good things for their kids. They want to be able to feed them and clothe them, provide health care and good education and stuff. But most of the time they're coming in, and housing is the big thing, and there's not a prevalence of housing. There's a severe lack of housing for the lower economic tier people. And I would love to see that grow, so we're not needed. Except for the few situations where you're trying to escape a violent, abusive situation or something, or transient going through to some of them sometimes. But a lot of the people, it's just, they're in a lower economic skill. They don't have a lot of education, so they don't have a lot of skill sets, and there's really no affordable housing for them anywhere.
And everybody's one step away, paycheck away from being homeless.
From one end of the spectrum to the other.
Right.
Yeah. It's deceiving. Many people who own their own business, who appear to be wealthy on some level and doing quite well, still maybe only a couple paychecks away from having issues. Right. And that's the nature of our times. May you live in interesting times is the Chinese curse, and I think that's exactly what we've been doing for many years now, but certainly since that bubble burst, and still trying to try to feel. And then when you have the political climate such as it is, that doesn't help the situation. People don't want to invest in times that are dicey. Right. Yeah. And until that happens, you're not going to have the more beneficent people coming out and doing something in the way of affordable housing. In all fairness, and to play a devil's advocate, we actually have a preponderance of HUD housing and low-income housing. Unfortunately, the need is simply greater than the availability. But for the size of our community, we actually have a fair amount of that. And many people here in town have invested in exactly that, knowing that HUD check comes every month.
Right.
That's not a bad business to be in.
Right.
Thank you both for taking the time today. I would really like for you to come back soon.
Sure.
Being you've only been 45 days, 30, 45 days, whatever it is, I'd like for you to come back at some time or another. We'll keep in touch. But share with us your progress, your needs. We're getting ready to go to Chipley Kiwanis Luncheon. You're going to speak there. I know we've got some money for you there as our yearly contribution to Armstrong House. Going forward, though, I would like to engage our audience and make known your needs, your most compelling needs, those which can be helped in some way, whether it's fiscally, it might just be in-kind donations. Who knows? So would you be willing to do that over time?
Absolutely.
Bill, Jackie, thanks so much. Nice to meet you both, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Okay. Our guests today have been Jackie and Bill Witt, currently the resident managers of Armstrong House in downtown Chipley. Certainly an opportunity for you as a viewer to learn a little bit more, perhaps to be engaged. If there's any way that you see that you might be able to help, whether it's a fiscal contribution, whether it's just an in-kind, it may just be giving Jackie and Bill a call and saying, hey, I've got a twin bed and where we're going to just give it away or leave it by the curb for the city to pick up, but maybe it's something you can use. I'm sure that there are all kinds of needs that Jackie and Bill experience every single day. If you're going to give to the food pantry, which is downstairs in the same building, you can simply stop by. I'm sure that they would be glad to give you a tour and to let you know a little bit more about what's going on. And it's certainly something that you need to keep your eye on. Jackie and Bill have already accepted, and you saw it, you witnessed the fact that they will be back to give us a little more update on their progress as time goes on. We'll be right back.